And so the presentation is, I guess, 8 essential things that every business person should know about data visualization. And before I get into who I am and what the crux of this all is about, it would help me to get a sense of how many people are relatively new to data visualization. Not just necessarily Tableau, but just taking numbers and helping people see and understand the pictures. So how many people have been doing this for 6 months or fewer? So if you can give me an approximate percentage, Paul, I'd appreciate it. How many are 6 months or fewer?
I would say about 1/6 of the room.
Okay, how about 6 months to a year?
That's a little bit less, maybe 5 out of the 70 or so that we have here.
Okay, 1 to 2 years of doing data visualization?
That's about 5, hands up again.
Okay, how about 2 to 5 years?
That's the lion's share of the room.
And how about 5 or more years?
That's even bigger, so.
Okay,
yes.
so that, and at this point, every hand should have gone up because I've given you, I've started at 0 and I've gone to infinity. So unless you just don't like raising your hand, at some point you should have put your hand up. All right, so we have a bunch of people who are relatively new and a lot of people who've been doing this for a while. So for the people who've been doing this for a while and thinking, well, you know, I know all this stuff, maybe I hope to arm you with things that will help you sell data visualization and how to use it intelligently within your organization. The number one impediment that I'm finding to all this is I wouldn't call it data literacy, I'd call it data illiteracy in an organization. People just not having the basic grammar and foundation of what works and what doesn't and why. And I'm going to try to show some of that today, some of which you already know, but maybe this will help you present it to others. Briefly, a little bit about me. Trying to get the clicker working here. I am the founder and principal and sole employee of Data Relations. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Viz champion. That was back in 1957. I'm a 5-time Tableau Zen Master, and I'm certainly very proud of that. And it says Tableau Zen Master on my business card. And those of you in the Tableau community, or I think most of you in the community know, that's an actual thing. You know, that's something that's a very high honor and designation within the community. If you're not in the Tableau community and someone hands you a business card and it says Tableau Zen Master, that person thinks you're a complete tool. I mean, what jerk puts Zen Master on his own business card? In any case, it is a real thing. And I'm certainly proud of that and being an Iron Viz champion, but by far the thing I'm most proud of within the data visualization community is being one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards, along with my fellow tool and co-author and Zen Master, Jeffrey Schaefer, and Andy Concrieve, who's the Chief Technical Evangelist at Tableau. This is Andy Concrieve's bookcase, by the way, and that's the author copies of the book that he has. And the book is an attempt to distill our now 40 plus years of experience in data visualization into a single book. For the most part, the reviews of the book have been very strong. The book is in its 3rd printing. There have been some notable exceptions to the positive reviews. Here's a review from Andy's daughter. This is my dad's book, and I think it's really boring because it's about dashboards. And in all fairness, she was not the target market for the book, so I probably thought the book was boring as well. Another thing that has pleased us greatly is the interesting use cases that people are coming for the book. Paul, again, I'm going to query the people who are in attendance. How many of you have ever worked on a product or service and you came into the building of it with a notion of how people would use the product or service, and then once it comes out, you're very surprised to see ways of using the thing you came up with that you had never envisioned before? Any of you had that kind of experience? Any hand?
Yeah. Let's see. We've got about 10 or 12 people raising their hand.
Yeah, you know, where, wow, people are using this in ways we certainly didn't envision, and that has happened a lot with the Big Book of Dashboards. People are kind enough to tweet about it or send us pictures of how they're using the book, this being one of my favorites. And you know, I've seen other data visualization, but you need 2 copies of their books to prop up the projector. You need only 1 of our book. If I were to try to help guide you in the right direction in data visualization, it would be the next slides I'm going to show you. The important. Always be thinking of the following, and this is so important, I'm going to open and end with it. Who is your audience? What's the message? And my gosh, it's taken me over 13 years to distill what I do down to a single sentence, but it's this. For the largest number of people in that audience, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. If that's what you're targeting, you're at least headed in the right direction. All right, let's discuss the 8 overarching things every business person should know or needs to know about data visualization. One is how people process and misprocess information. Okay? I'm going to start by a little discussion of our cognitive system, our visual cognitive system. The good news, it is absolutely amazing, and the bad news, it is highly flawed. All right, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to put your hand up when you see the toothbrush. I'm going to show you a scene in the bathroom, and when you see the toothbrush, please raise your hand. Everybody ready? Rhetorical question. I hope you are. And the moment you see the toothbrush, raise your hand. Okay? Hands going up?
Oh my gosh, yep, over half the room.
Right, really quickly, seeing the toothbrush. And that's great. I'm assuming everybody saw. You all see this toothbrush? It's the largest thing in the room, and probably only a handful of you saw the toothbrush. Now, in all fairness, that's kind of learned behavior. Most of the problems that you're going to run into data with visualization are things that we are hardwired to either see or not see. This is a case where you don't expect to see something like that, so you're going to miss the largest object in the room. Here's something from Professor Bo Lotto. And how many of you have seen this before? Any of you seen this particular image before? Raise your hand if you've seen it.
Yep, very few hands, maybe 5.
Okay, so I've seen this 200-300 times, and I know that the gray tile on top is the same color as the gray tile on the bottom, but the one on top looks darker to me, and I bet you it looks darker to you. And if you're going, what are you talking about? That's a gray tile and a white tile. What do you mean they're the same color? Let me try to prove it to you. I'm going to take the gray from here, and I'm going to put it down here. And you're probably thinking, oh, you've lightened it up as you were moving it. That's what you did. But I will take this gray, and I will hide the part in the middle, and you can see that it, in fact, is the same color gray. And I can't not see the thing at the bottom being lighter because it's hardwired how I look at things. And what do I mean by that? We live in a world where there is one natural light source, and that is the sun. And anything that is in direct sunlight, we're going to interpret as, oh, if it's a certain color and it's in direct sunlight, it must be bright. And anything that's in a shadow and it's a certain color must be darker. And that's why we're getting the confusion that's happening here. It's the same color, but because where they meet, we're seeing some piece in the shadow and some piece in direct sunlight. Oh, this thing must be lighter, this must be darker. And you can't shape that. Other things that you can't help but be misled by. Most people, you're probably thinking that the blue rectangle, the blue object that's on the horizon is longer than the one that's in the foreground, but it's not, and that's because the image behind it is creating the deception that these things are actually the same size. So this is something that you can't shake, and there are dozens of other things that are associated with it, and that if you're not careful, they're going to trip up how people interpret, how your stakeholders interpret your data visualization. Well, I'm about to transition to where we're terrible at doing things to where we're absolutely amazing. I'm going to start with an example where we're not particularly good, and then quickly go, oh my gosh, we're absolutely amazing. Here is a grid of 100 numbers. I'd like you to take the time right now, it'll take a little while, and quietly to yourselves, count how many 9s there are. I want you to go through this sequentially and tell me how many 9s there are. Okay, Paul, again, I need you to be my interpreter. How many people think they're got 12 9s? Anyone? 12 9s?
Yes, maybe 10 in the room,
Okay, how many got 13?
the majority of the room.
And how many got 14?
2.
Okay, so it took a while, and we're not even sure what the right answer is, although the majority of people in the room got 13. Let's do it again. Now try it. And you probably were able to do this much more quickly, and we're probably going to have the vast majority of people, almost everybody, if not everybody, realizing, oh, there are in fact 13 9s. And boy, just by using color intelligently and something that our mind is wired to do well, this became a much simpler problem. By the way, this use of color, it's called a pre-attentive attribute. I'll define what that is in a moment. But I didn't have to just use color. I could have done this. And you would have now used size as the mechanism to say, let me find the large things and ignore the small things. Now, lest you think, wow, this thing with color is great. It's working because we made everything we didn't care about gray and everything we cared about red. If I do this, this is almost as difficult as the first example. It's a little easier because you're looking for a certain shape and a certain color, but it's still going to be very difficult to do. Well, the intelligent use of color, or the use of size, they are example of what are called, and I know a lot of you know this term, pre-attentive attributes. These are things you notice without even noticing that you notice them. This is things that you process without having to attend to it. It's stuff that your mind processes automatically without you consciously doing anything. You can't not see certain things. I can't not see that the length of that line over here is bigger than the others, that this thing is pointing in a different direction, that this shape is different. It's what has allowed humans to survive. Well, invariably, there's a question that comes with which, all right, these pre-attentive attributes, these are your visualization tools. These are the things you're going to use to help people see stuff you want them to see in your data. Which pre-attentive attributes are best? And best is a really loaded question because it depends on what you're trying to do. But I do want to transition to why it is that we see bar charts and the problem with the allure of cool shapes and circles and colorful items. You may recognize this data as Superstore data that's been visualized. On the left, I have what Tableau would like to do if you just let it do its thing. Just double-click on sum of sales, double-click on product subcategory, and Tableau is going to make a bar chart. And what is the thing that we have on the right? Well, the thing we have on the right is you've just discovered the Show Me button in Tableau. And it's like, whoa, this looks so cool. Wow, man, look how they pack the bubbles, and it's really interesting, and it's engaging, and without doubt, it's colorful. But if I were to ask questions like, how much bigger is this circle than this other circle, and I were to take the number out, man, you would not have a clue. If I were to say, hey, what item is third from the bottom, what's fourth from the top? These are very reasonable questions, and they become difficult. So I want to give you a sense at how much easier it is to judge the length of bars and how hard it is to judge the area of circles. So I'm going to ask you all to do the following, which is take out your phones, or if you have a laptop or a tablet, and I want you to go to tabsoft.co/value. That's the URL that's in the bottom right-hand corner. tabsoft.co/value. And I want you to try to estimate the values of D and H. If bar A is 150, how big is bar D? And if circle F has an area of 200, what's the area of H? And this is intentionally difficult.
Can you give us that URL again?
You don't see it in the bottom right corner?
Yeah, it's covered by
By the box of me?
The Zoom meeting.
Oh wait, hold on a sec, hold on. We're gonna, okay, how are we gonna do this? I'm gonna figure it out. We have amazing technology for doing this, including that. How's that?
There we go. Now we can see it. Yes, sir.
All right. I can't not hear the Jeopardy theme in my head as people do this type of thing. Now you're all hearing the Jeopardy theme in your head. Okay, I'm gonna move this in a minute because we're gonna update the results live. Okay, tabsoft.co/value. Everybody, Paul, anybody need a little more time, or are we good?
Are we good? I think they're mostly nodding, yes.
Okay, nodding or nodding off?
No, nodding in agreement, they are not.
Ah, okay, very good. All right, so let's look at the results as of, a couple of days ago. Let's make it glorious. This is really telling. Take a look at what we're seeing here, is that most people, the distribution of guesses for the bars is really pretty good. You got most people guessing right between 40, or the largest mode, largest group of people guessing right between 40 and 50, but it really trails off with underestimating and overestimating. Look at the guesses for H, they're all over the place. And most people not getting it correct. And these were both difficult. You know, we could have really stacked the deck and made it an easy bar choice. Circles are almost always difficult. In fact, you're going to see in a minute just how hard they are. Let's see how, you're all professional thinking about charts the way most people don't think about charts. Let's see how you did. So let me refresh all the extracts here. Hold on a sec. Okay, and let's look at last day and see how folks did. And not bad. Not bad, you kind of proved my point. A couple people really overestimated the size of D, but most of you got this right. And as I would expect, you kind of all over the place with the circles. Bottom line is people are great at judging the length of bars from a common baseline or the position from a common baseline, and humans are terrible at judging the area of circles. And I'm going to try to drive this home a little bit with you. So what is data visualization? And this is a quote from Andy Kirk that I like very much. The representation and presentation of data that exploits our visual perception abilities in order to amplify cognition. In other words, take advantage of the stuff that people do well, try to avoid the things they do poorly. So I want to have a little more discussion of why we see so many bar charts. Here are 3 ways of presenting the same information. In this case, the data is A is 37 and B is 75. Look at the bars in the left. Look how easy it is to see that B is twice as big as A. In fact, some of you out there, your OCD is so well tuned, you can say, it's ever so slightly more than twice as big. Most people, the circles that are in the middle, they just totally mess that up. They think B is maybe 1.5 times as big. It's twice as big. I don't know anyone on the planet who can look at the bottom 2 circles and say, that blue is twice as blue as that other blue. You just can't do that. You can see that there's a difference, but you can't quantify it. And if I'm not hitting you over the head enough with this, try not to think of how you're perceiving it. Think of your stakeholders, your audience, people who do not think about data and its presentation to the depth that you do. If you were to present them with these 2 circles and say, what percentage of the larger circle is the smaller circle? Or how much of the dark blue is the light blue taking up? What do you think most people would say? What would be your guess? And Paul, if you could just ask people to, if you could interpret for me, what do you think most people would say?
3/4.
What was the percentage?
Yeah, and I heard somebody say 3/4.
3/4, okay.
Yeah, it looks like the light blue is like 3/4 of the dark blue. And does anyone want to tell me what they know or what they suspect the actual values are?
You think it's half?
It's half. It is half. And I've seen this thing. Look, I put this slide together. I've seen demonstrations of this. It looks like it's about 3/4 to me. I know it's half. So we're just not very good at judging the size of circles compared with the length of bars. Now, one takeaway that I've had, people think, circle's bad, bar is good. No, circles just aren't good for exact comparisons. Let me show you a great use of circles. It's right here. Okay, here's a map of the United States, omitting Alaska and Hawaii. Does anybody know what this map is trying to show? What is this a map of? Anyone want to take a guess? Paul, you'll need to interpret for me.
Okay, so population.
Population, that is usually the number one answer, and it's because most people see, there's a big blob for California, right? And then they look and go, okay, there's a pretty big blob for New York and Texas, and then, can't be population. Because we're seeing Oregon and Washington having large blobs. So it's not population. What else is this a map of?
Number of companies.
Sales?
Sales?
Of some type.
Yeah. Could be the sales of some type. I've heard rainfall. Some people have guessed recreational marijuana use. And then they look at then they look at Colorado and go, no, it can't be that. The bottom line is, I have no idea what this is a map of. I made this map 6 years ago. I forgot to put a title on top of it. But whatever it's a map of, we know whatever it is, there's more of it happening on the West Coast. And that's useful. I now know that I'm going to have to work crazy mad to figure out how much smaller this is than this. But it's useful for me to say, hey, this is a map and more, the biggest values are on the West Coast, and that is useful. It's just not useful for exact comparisons. All right, so that would be, number one is realizing we do things well, we do things poorly. Number two is fighting this, why just the numbers isn't good enough. Question for everybody there. How many of you have colleagues, bosses, stakeholders who say, I just want to see a crosstab of numbers. Now, I don't need to see the charts, I just want to see the numbers.
Yeah, about a quarter of the room raised their hand.
Okay, that's really common. Let me give you a amalgam or composite of all the clients I have had in my career that indicate that that's kind of what they would like to see. So you can have my spreadsheet when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. And there's a frustration of, gee, I appreciate that you want to see the numbers, but we're not good at just looking at numbers and making sense of them. No matter how much better you may be than somebody else, we're just not good at it. And this notion of, gee, I don't need to see charts and graphs, they're not going to tell me anything that I can't see without the numbers, this is not a new frustration. Some of you will know of a British statistician by the name of Francis Anscombe. And in the early 70s, he was trying to get his colleagues to adopt the use of charts and graphs to help them better understand the data. And this is recounted wonderfully. Andy Cochran writes about this in the first chapter of the Big Book of Dashboards, that they say, well, charts and graphs are rough, but if you really want to understand the numbers, you need to do a rigorous statistical analysis of them. And Anscombe came up with a quartet, or a group of 4 sets of numbers, where he was trying to prove his colleagues that just doing the statistical analysis is not nearly enough. So here are 4 groups of numbers: Group A, Group B, Group C, Group D. You're probably starting to look at the numbers and see patterns in them. And the interesting thing about this 4 groupings is that when you conduct the quote-unquote rigorous statistical analysis, you get exactly the same results. The average of X, the average of Y, the correlation, the linear regression line that best defines the relationship between X and Y, they're exactly the same. So to a statistician, these things are functionally all equivalent. But watch what happens when you actually plot and visualize the numbers. It's totally different stuff. It's amazing. Now, if you want to apply this to our own work, we see stuff like this all the time. People are asking you to report on this. And in fact, it's even worse. This is 16 quarters worth of data, and I'm having it wrap around. All right, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. One is, overall, which of these 3 categories, furniture, office supplies, or technology, overall, which is the top seller and which is the bottom seller? And you're probably scanning the numbers and looking through it, and you're seeing, I'm seeing a lot of big numbers for technology. So it may take, 20, 30 seconds, and you say, okay, overall technology is bigger than, it looks like office supplies are kind of small. And you're absolutely right. Well done. Now suppose I were to say, in which quarters was that not the case? And did the thing that was in first place go to second or third place? That's going to take you 2 minutes. Whereas if you were to visualize this, it becomes instantly simple. I can see the technology in blue. Notice the direct labeling here, as opposed to having a legend, so nice visualization technique. I can see that it is the top in every month or every quarter except here and here. It went to second place here, and it went to second place here, and it went to third place here. And I can see that office supplies is the bottom dweller, and in a couple of places, it crossed the other ones. Super simple to see this. Hard for me to see what's going on with just the numbers, difficult for me to see, extremely easy for me to see what's going on with the chart. Question for folks, how many of you have heard of an author, and he's a polyglot and polymath, by the name of Alberto Cairo? How many of you have heard of Alberto?
We've got about 6 hands in the room.
Okay, he does brilliant work. He's a professor of data journalism at the University of Miami. He has written 2 fantastic books. The first is Functional Art, the second is Truthful Art, and he has a new book coming out this fall called When Charts Lie. In any case, it turns out this man of many accomplishments is also an amateur archaeologist, and he recently unearthed an ancient data set. And he decided to go the statistician round and do the rigorous statistical analysis a la Anscombe's colleagues. And he got the average of X, the average of Y, and he didn't really get anything particularly useful. But when he actually plotted the numbers, he realized that he had discovered the data source. Okay, number 3. We're revisiting our person who only likes to see the numbers, I'd like to introduce you to the gateway drug to data visualization, the highlight table and the heat map. If you're having trouble getting people to adopt or believe in it, I think this is going to be a great way to win them over. Start by showing them something like this, which is a crosstab of 17 different subcategories, 4 different regions. That's 17 times 4, that's 68 different cells. And ask them to scan through this and find what combination of region and product subcategory is the worst performer in terms of profit and which is the best in terms of profit. Okay, which is the worst and which is the best. And people who are in the back of the room are definitely going to be at a disadvantage because these numbers are not particularly large. And anyone want to tell me what is the combination of region and product subcategory that is the worst? Anyone ready to take a go at it?
The worst region and subcategory.
The worst combination.
Yep.
A combination of product subcategory and region together.
Which one? Tables in East.
Tables in the East. That's a minus $50,000. You are correct, sir. Well done. And what is the best performer? Office machines. We have I kind of got the amalgam of people speaking there. Yes, it is office machines in the South. Good job scanning through that. And now I'm going to present the same data, but I'm going to color code the cells. It's just a heat map where you put the numbers inside, and this becomes so easy. You can just see immediately, oh, look, dark orange thing. Oh, look, there's the dark blue thing. And a whole bunch of other things really pop out. I can see binders and binders accessories are doing really well. I can see tables are doing really poorly, except in one place. And I can also see the telephones and communication are doing well. And people usually get pretty excited about this. And if once they're excited about this, I'm going to get them excited about something else. Let me go to another set of data at this point. So this is called a highlight table. Is just a heat map with a bunch of numbers in a crosstab. Here is data. Let me explain what's going along the left and what's going along the top. I've got the time of the day along the left side, and I've got the day of the week along the top. This is the propensity of a certain politician who will not be named to tweet. It's the day of the week and the time of the day that a politician has tweets. The fact that I'm using an orange color palette is completely coincidental. Whenever I see people with either a scatter plot or a highlight table, I always think, might this be an opportunity to create a marginal histogram? That is, to create a little bar chart along the bottom and along the side that will help summarize each of the different rows and columns. And I think this adds a huge amount of value to a highlight table that I can really get a sense. And now you're starting to introduce bar charts. So you started with just the numbers with these people. You showed them how valuable it was to add the color coding, and now you're putting the bar chart so they can see, ooh, if this politician is tweeting about you at 8 in the morning, this person must be really pissed off because very few tweets happen at that time of the day. So if you take nothing else from this, it's, putting a marginal histogram around a highlight table works around scatter plots might be a cool idea. All right.
And I kind of want to interrupt you. That chart that you just showed, it was like Justin Timberlake just walked in front of the audience because everybody's camera went up to take a picture.
Oh, cool. It's not terrible. It's going to take you more than 2 minutes to do this, but it's not going to take you more than 5 or 10. It's just making the things all line up by notching this thing against that other thing. And it's rare that it doesn't add a lot of additional insights into stuff. So I think in the book we only have 1 or 2 marginal histograms. If we were doing the book now, I'd add a bunch more. All right, number 4, the use and abuse of color. Jeff Schaefer and I are in complete agreement about this. We think this is the #1 infraction in data visualization. And you have this idea that, oh, I'm going to use color and it's going to help me organize and see patterns and get everything just really clear and distinct. But more often than not, you end up with something like this. This is Jeff's favorite page of the book. This is page 15 of the big book of dashboards. And we say, if you understand this, you understand absolutely everything there is to know about color in data visualization. It only takes up half a page, by the way. Now, I realize that's tantamount to saying, if you understand this, this is everything you need to know about composing music. But really, if we were to go through each of these different things and explain how they're used or misused, you'd have a really good sense. The #1 place that people mess up is with the use of categorical color. Hey, we've got 12 different line items that we sell in our company. Let's have a different color for each of them. Hey, we've got 15 different regions. Let's have 15 different colors. And I'm going to try to drive this home with you. Paul, I'm going to need your help. I'm going to ask you to come up with a way. I'm going to ask the left side of the room, if there is such a thing, to keep their eyes open. And I want the right side of the room, and where the left side is the left side facing the screen. Left side of the room, keep your eyes open. Right side, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Paul, do people have a sense of who's left and who's right?
Okay, we do, yes.
Okay. Right side of the room, close your eyes. Left side, keep them open. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Now everybody open their eyes. Hopefully you took that image in, the left side. Okay, left side of the room, close your eyes. Right side, leave them open. Okay? Everybody ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, everybody open your eyes. First group. I just showed you an image for 5 seconds. Did any of you come to a conclusion by looking at what I showed you?
More sales on weekdays?
What's that?
Like more sales on weekdays?
Say it a little louder.
There are weekdays and weekends?
More sales on the weekends? More rentals on the weekends?
Weekdays.
Or was it fewer rentals on the weekends?
Fewer on weekends.
Okay, how many people on the left side saw that? Fewer rentals on the weekends. Okay. Are a lot of hands up, I hope?
No, not a lot.
Wow. Maybe I should have said, look at this and what conclusion did you reach? Okay, now did anybody in the second group see that there were fewer rentals on the weekends?
So what is the second group?
Well, let me show you what you both saw.
Okay.
Now, when I've done this in the past, and maybe then I'll say, okay, look at this thing and I want you to, I think I forgot with the first group and say, I want you to try to find a conclusion. It's amazing, I did this in front of 800 people at TCE, and the first group that saw the chart on the left, like 8 out of 10 hands went up. There were like 300 hands were up. And the group that saw all the colors of the rainbow stuff going on, barely any hands went up. And this is where people mess up. In the first case, I'm using color because I want you to notice something. You can't help but being drawn towards the things that are a different color. On the right side, you have to fight color to come to any conclusion. By the way, if I were really curating the results, I might do something like this. If this was going in a slide deck and I don't want to have someone have to go, what is this person trying to show me? But it's really hard on the left one not to see, all right, I'm seeing a couple of things that are blue. I guess this person wants me to see it. On the version on the right, it's, I have no idea what's going on. Is it LB? LGBT, Pride Week? What is this an image of? Okay, number 5, engagement through personalization. And I was working with a major consulting group that were doing a worldwide HR survey, and the first year that they produced it, they had a demographics dashboard that looked something like this. It was much more involved. They had over 3,000 people participating, and they had gender, generation, location, they had education, they had income level, industry, etc. They thought this is kind of boring. So the second year, unbeknownst to me, they decided to update their the demographics dashboard and create something that they thought would be more interesting and engaging, and they came up with something that looked like this. And we may or may not hear a sound effect. Not sure if I have it working or not. We have it working. This is an example of a screaming cat, meaning this is something, when you see this in the book, it means we don't think you should make a dashboard that looks like this. Without a doubt, this has some cool things in it. We've got this thing that looks like a mondrian over here. Then, gee, I don't know what's up with the traditionalists here, but they're red, so they must be really angry. And I can clearly see I have more men that took the survey than women, because there's a number that says 52. Yes, this may look interesting, but you're gonna lose your audience, because it's gonna take them 2 minutes to parse this whole thing and realize, so what? How does this help me? And the answer is, it really doesn't much. You've taken something that would take 4 seconds for them to parse, turned it into 2 minutes, and you didn't teach anything very, very useful. The trick to getting people to really care about their dashboards, or the dashboards you're building for them, well, does anyone know who this was? 5 bonus points to anyone in the audience who recognizes this person. Yeah, who is it? Mayor Ed Koch of New York, mayor from 1977 to 1985. Well done. And he had a famous catchphrase, "How am I doing?" And if you can somehow insert your stakeholder into the dashboard, they're going to go nuts for stuff. How much older, younger am I than others? How is the store I manage performing compare to others? How did my session compare with others, etc.? Or how do people like me respond to a survey? That's how you make the demographics dashboard useful. But you're starting to see this, by the way. Are any of you seeing, what if your neighbors are watching, how peer pressure can be used to lower energy bills? Any of you seeing stuff like this starting now with your energy bills? Here's you, here's everybody else, and here are the way cooler neighbors that you want to be like. Any hands going up? Is anybody seeing utility bills like this?
Yeah, maybe a handful, 5.
Yeah, it's very popular up in my neck of the woods and in other states, where they're trying to say, oh, I'm going to show you versus other groups. Well, let me show you how potent this can be. This is a population histogram of the United States. It's showing the number of millions of people that are, in this case, newborns, number of people who are 25, the number of people who are 52, etc. I find this interesting. Most of my friends and family think this is a big snooze. And I can't help but look at something like this and think, oh my gosh, look at that. Look at this thing that happened over here. Right around age 65, suddenly the thing really drops off. And I will ask people, well, why the huge drop off at 65? I don't know the answer. I have 2 theories. The first theory is, oh, people retire and then they die, which is kind of saddening to think that that would be the case, but the number of people kind of lose a sense of purpose if they don't have work. The other much more likely case is, this is data from 2014, and if that's right at the cusp of the baby boom generation. The bigger bars are 1946 and later. So you have the baby boomers coming in, and that's why you have the decrease. Those are people who were born before 1946. And if I were to ever get my act together and update the data with more recent census data, assuming it is accurate US Census data, that's a freighted question these days, you would see that big drop-off move 5 years to the right. Well, you really want to get people to understand this data, make that thing about them. And I got inspired by this by my friend and colleague. Let me get this up and running for you. Chad Skelton, who gave a presentation, and he put something, "Are you over the hill in Canada?" And you can type in your age or move a slider, and you can see how much older or younger you were than other people. Do I have any volunteers? Do I have a volunteer who's willing to give up their age and gender, and we can see how much older or younger they are than other Americans? By the way, let me just, give you a warning. If you're older than 50, this thing is depressing.
Age?
Oh, 50.
50?
50 and male or female?
And male.
Male, okay. Oh, hold on, it's got to restart. There we go. Male and 50 years old. You are older than 68.1% of male Americans. Everybody, all the bars to the left are younger, the bars are older. Do we have another volunteer?
Yes, ma'am.
27.
27 and female.
I am so not feeling sorry for you. 27 and female. Okay, you are older than 34.6% of female Americans. I'm going to take one for the team. I'm a male, and I am 60 years old. I know, hard to believe. And this is depressing. I am older than 81.8% of American males. And the only solace I can take from this is that, well, my brother is 5 years older than I am, and he's been lording that over me for a very long time. And so, hey, Rick, ha! I have a weird day-to-day business life. I go to the gym and work out, and then I have breakfast with the Eldercockers, what are essentially my parents' generation upstairs at the gym. And these are people who range in age from 78 to 95. It's amazing going to the gym, and one of them said, "Oh, put my age in that thing." And I said, "You really don't want me to do that?" I said, No, it's okay, put my age in there. Okay, he was 83. He's older than 98.1% of male Americans. He was really bummed out. So don't show this to your parents. But this becomes sticky. People want to explore it because you've made it about your stakeholder. You've made it about, and they'll put their own age in, they'll put their partner's age in, their parents, their relatives, their etc. And that's a very powerful way to get people to use stuff. And which also gets me to, in addition to personalization, the power of disaggregated data. I'm going to show you a type of chart. It's called the jitter plot, and I want to describe why I'm so excited about it. I was working with a major healthcare concern. They had tons of data on thousands of companies throughout the United States and hundreds of thousands of employees. And they were trying to get one organization to realize you've got a problem with diabetes in your organization, not just the employees, but the family members as well. Said, the incidence of diabetes in your organization is 18.5% of your employees and families have this, but the national average for all other like organizations is 4.9%. And they went, yeah, that's really bad. I guess we should do something about it. Well, they knew on some level. And then I'm not saying this is the greatest visualization in the world, but we came up with this jitter plot where each dot is a different company. And the higher the dot, the worse the incidence of diabetes is. And there's no difference between a left and a right dot. It's just, some way to spread the dots out. And now you can see, oh my God, look, almost all the dots are clustering down here. That's the 25th percentile, the 50th, the 75th percentile. We have a terrible, look how isolated and bad our dot is compared to everything else. We really have a big problem in our organization. And just the numbers of the aggregated data just didn't do it. So one, this is personalization, but it's personalization where they can really understand the context. Let me try to drive this home. Here is a salary comparison system, and it allows you to type in your ID and see, here's your salary compared to the average salary, and it's broken down by generation. So whomever this is someone from generation X, and they can see here's their salary and the average of everybody else. If you were this person, how pissed off would you be? You know, here's your salary, and you can see the average it seems to be a lot higher. And you know, you're probably a little pissed off. Hey, I'm making 82,000, but the average is 110. Gee, why could that be? Well, maybe I'm not as experienced, et cetera, et cetera. So you're probably a little miffed. Let me show you the same data using the same data, but in a disaggregated display. And you're gonna go from being mildly miffed to downright pissed off. Here's your dot, it's all the way down here. And right here, I've got the 25th percentile, the median, and the 75th percentile. You're still making 82,000, but now you can see that there are a lot of people making up, and you're not even you're in the lowest quartile. So here's you versus the average. Okay, if that's the best you can do, great. But if you can do disaggregated data, wow. And I've been experimenting with this a bit in different possible ways of showing it. Here's the same thing when showing overall. Here's you versus others in the lower quartile, median, and upper quartile. Here's another possible way to show this, which is a unit histogram so you can see the distribution. Either way, showing here's you versus others within a context, very powerful, and people will use your dashboards because you've inserted them into it. Okay, a couple more quick things. The importance of collaborating and getting your stakeholders involved. You need to find collaborators and iterate. And people have asked me, how is it that 3 people can write a book together? Didn't you have to get into fights and disagreements? We never got into fights, and we would certainly have disagreements, but they were debates, but they ended up producing much better material because we had a common goal. We weren't trying to make art. We weren't a band that was going to break up because of artistic differences. We had one common goal, which was for the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. And you may need help with stuff. Here's a scenario. I had someone come up and it led to a dashboard that made it into the book. And they were saying, I'm stuck, here's the type of data I have. We're trying to look at churn. We are, people subscribe to our service. So this could be churn with a subscription service. This could be churn with an employee churn. How many people are coming in? How many people are leaving? And I looked at this and said, yeah, this is kind of tricky. I think some type of waterfall chart may do the trick. And that night, I went home, and this was my first attempt to try to show people coming in, people leaving. The gray bars up are people signing up for service, the red bars down, and the line across. This is my first attempt. Here is another composite of my next 30 iterations of trying to get this thing to work, most of which are some form of bar charts, except this one, which is, well, what's this odd-looking mountain chart? And the way to read it was, well, here are people coming in, the gray mountains, and the red are the people leaving. Now, normally you would think positive numbers point up, negative numbers point down, but by superimposing, you can see where the negative exceed the positive, and then the line chart is the running sum. And some people liked it, most people were really confused. I thought for a while, this is gonna win the day, but eventually, with some help, and you know, Andy Congreve said, I'm not buying this thing, the gaps between things, it's hard for me to follow what's going on. I still have to explain to people how to read this chart, which I'm not gonna do right now, but it only takes about 10, 15 seconds, and it was a pretty potent and powerful way to show what's going on, but I needed a lot of people to give me pushback on it. One of the requirements of the dashboard was to just have, they said, we want to see the actual numbers. And Jeff Schaefer said, I'm not buying this. I said, well, it was a requirement. He said, you can do better than that. I forgot my own admonition, which was the gateway drug to data visualization. If someone insists on having the numbers, give them a highlight table instead. And ultimately, this is the dashboard that made it into the book. That said, I've now had a lot of discussions, collaboration, looked at things that work and don't work, and I'm now a big believer of dashboards having what are called bands or big-ass numbers. And I'll get into that in another day, but if I could change one thing, I would put these things up at the top. And the version of this dashboard showing churn, it's at bigbookofdashboards.com, and it has the big-ass numbers up at the top. So there's the before example, and there's the after example. All right, the last thing, what you should always keep in mind when doing data visualization. And with that, I want to show a very famous chart. Show of hands, how many people have seen this chart before?
About half the room, a little bit more than half the room.
Outstanding. That is an uncommonly large number of people, but you have an uncommonly well-run Tableau user group with uncommonly intelligent and astute people. Do not worry if you have not seen this before. The reason a lot of people have seen it is because it has been celebrated in a pretty famous book about data visualization. There's the author and data visualization guru by the name of Edward Tufte, and he wrote a book in 1983 called The Visual Display of Quantitative Data, in which he argues this may be the best statistical graph ever done. And a lot of people have studied this graph. In fact, here is a re-rendering of it done in English. This graph was built in 1869 by Charles Menard. It is an attempt to depict much of what happened when Napoleon attempted to conquer Moscow between 1812 and 1813. Those of you who have never seen it before, let me give you some quick information about it. The thickness of this oddly shaped item here is the number of troops. So the thicker it is, the more troops Napoleon had. And he started with 420,000 troops. Some of them went north. They are traveling east. Some of them flanked out over here to Polotsk. You'll notice the bars are getting thinner because troops are dying. They eventually reach Moscow. Disaster when they get there. The Russians burn the city rather than let it be captured. And the black line is the return trip. By the way, the reason it's red here and not the beige that you saw is that people had believed that the ink faded over time and that originally it was red. This is the return trip in black. And down here is a chart showing what the temperature was outside during the return. It was originally done just in the Rameau scale. I had never even heard of the Rameau scale, but also depicted as centigrade and Fahrenheit. And it was ridiculously cold, getting down to as low as minus 36 degrees Fahrenheit on December 6th. The troops that went up here have rejoined the battle down here. That's why the line gets thicker, because they're being attacked from the rear. And eventually, when everyone returns to where they started, Napoleon started with 420,000 troops and ended with 10,000 troops. So, what does Seth Godin, best-selling author on marketing, have to say about Menard's graph? This is one of the worst graphs ever made. Tufte's very happy because it shows 5 different pieces of information on 3 axes, and if you study it for 15 minutes, it really is worth 1,000 words. I don't think that's what graphs are for. I think they try to make a point in 2 seconds for people who are too lazy to read the 40 words underneath. So, have any of you heard of a data visualization specialist by the name of Jorge Camoes? He's best known for really seriously amazing work on creating graphics in Excel, but he's recently taken a shine to Tableau. Anyone know of Jorge?
Only about 3 hands in the room.
Okay, he does great work, and I'm super excited to see that he's now involved in the Tableau world. In any case, he did a Makeover Monday type of thing. You know, and I know there are a lot of people there who participate in Makeover Monday and know what it's about. And he decided to take the Menard data and see if he could do a better job with it. And this is what he came up with. Now, by the way, I would say this is a great chart. It's one of the few cases where I think a pie chart works great. But don't ask me which is the better chart, Menard or this one. It really depends. One more overarching thing I want to get people thinking about. So, because I can argue this is a better chart, I could argue that the Menard chart is certainly a Menard chart is more complicated and more involved. But before writing the big book of dashboards, a dear friend and colleague, Kelly Martin, suggested that I read this book, Badass, Making Users Awesome by Kathy Sierra. And the main thesis behind it is people don't want to be badass at using your tool, they want to be badass at what using your tool allows them to do. I know that's the thing I was supposed to take away. That's not what I took away from the book. What I took away was, how is what I'm making going to help my audience? What is it that they're looking for? What is it that they need and want to see? And it informs everything I do right now, okay? You know, here's a typical agenda slide, you know, for one of my workshops. But I know, you know, that's not what people care about. This is what they're looking for. So, if I might, always be thinking, who is your audience? What's the message? And for the largest number of people, provide the greatest degree of understanding with the least amount of effort. By the way, so 2 websites, bigbookofdashboards.com, 14 of the scenarios and the dashboards that are in the book are available in Tableau format. I have a lot of free content readily available at datarevelations.com. My subspecialty is survey data. My email and my Twitter handle are there. And I will be in Atlanta giving a full day workshop on October 3rd. There's the URL and the promo code for this. All right, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm sorry I didn't get to see you all. And Paul, thanks. And I hope to see some of you on October 3rd, and maybe some of you at the Tableau conference in Las Vegas later this year. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, sir.